H minus 10 seconds. 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
This is episode 2 in a 3-episode series on the Doomsday Clock. Now, while it's not necessary for you to watch the first episode to still enjoy this one, hopefully, it will give you some backstory and a little bit more of information about the clock's history if you do watch episode 1. So if you want to pause now, go back and watch that, that'd be great. If not, we will just say welcome back. My name is Ben James. In the first episode, we went through the historical, political, and governmental areas of influence of the Doomsday Clock. Episode 3 will be dedicated to a bunker debrief full of takeaways, theories, and just general tomfoolery regarding the Doomsday Clock. We're taking this episode now, and we're going to consider how the Doomsday Clock, and the Doomsday Clock only, has affected or been represented in pop culture and our society. While you will notice that this list is quite abbreviated, it is impactful. These brief statements in this episode will again come directly from the Bulletin of Atomic Scientists website, where you can also view the full statements for each year referenced both in culture, society, and also politics and government. This is not, however, a comprehensive look at how the Cold War impacted our areas in, say, pop culture, for example, because I'm not sure we have enough episodes in the lifespan to cover all of those. These on this episode are Doomsday Clock references only. So with that, let's start the clock. "1949, moving the minute hand. The Doomsday Clock's minute hand moves for the first time upon news of the Soviet atomic bomb test. Bulletin editor Eugene Rabinowitch, who is a leading scientist in the movement for international control of atomic energy, consults his colleagues before changing the minute hand on the cover design from 7 minutes to midnight to 3 minutes to midnight. It began in 1947, and this is the first time that it's moved. Rabinowitch, having been known for his broad and active network of independent scientists and his ability to capture the prevailing wisdom about world politics and about the nuclear arms race, is responsible for every movement of the minute hand until his death in 1973.
And it all started here, a week earlier, with an aerial photograph that doesn't seem to show much unless you're looking for something specific.
In 1964, we see the clock move to 12 minutes as we see Doomsday and Descent. After the Cuban Missile Crisis in 1962 and before the escalation of the United States' role in Vietnam, United States public opinion broadly supports the Cold War and also the country's nuclear policies. Against this backdrop, satire becomes an effective tool for questioning the conventional wisdom about nuclear weapons. I think it's fair for us to pause right here and let me ask you this. When is satire not an effective tool? Stanley Kubrick's film, Dr. Strangelove, or How I Learned to Stop Worrying and Love the Bomb, uses the darkest of black comedy, a remarkable three-role performance by Peter Sellers and the specter of a Soviet doomsday device to take issue with the arms race between the superpowers is used. Knowing what we know now, are we sure this work is completely satire, or could it just be an incredibly creative documentary that's been told in advance? "1973, an end of an era hits, 12 minutes still on the clock, when Eugene Rabinowitz dies, and the Bulletins Board of Directors assumes the responsibility for setting the Doomsday Clock. Before making decisions, the directors consult scientific and other colleagues, especially the distinguished members of the Bulletins Board of Sponsors. In 1977, the clock in fiction, as we are at 9 minutes to midnight. American mystery writer Helen McCloy, also known as Helen Clarkson, publishes her novel, The Imposter. She employs the Doomsday Clock as a plot device in the story of a woman named Marina who recovers consciousness after a car crash to find herself in a psychiatric clinic and who becomes a pawn in someone else's sinister game. The nuclear culture in 1980 sets it at 7 minutes. 35 years into the nuclear era, cultural references to the Doomsday Clock and nuclear peril abound. The Clash releases Sandinista, a triple album that includes The Call-Up, a song that references the Doomsday Clock with the line, "It's 55 minutes past 11." Kind of sounds like a DJ on a radio station back in the day kind of thing, right? It's 55 minutes past 11, 5 to the top of the hour. Meanwhile, in the political sphere, the superpowers cling to nuclear weapons, much to the Bulletin's dismay. Quote, "The Soviet Union and United States have been behaving like what might be best described as nucleoholics." See episode 1, still the best line on the webpage. They seem to be drunks who continue to insist that the drink being consumed is absolutely, positively the last one. But they always seem to be able to find a good excuse for just one more round. 1981, we see Doctor Who. Doomsday motifs continue to proliferate in popular culture, as evidenced by the title of an episode of the BBC's science fiction television program Doctor Who, with the title 4 to Doomsday. In 1982, 4 minutes left on the clock, and The Who 2 happens. The Who's album, It's Hard, taps into the 1980s earlier nuclear anxiety. The song, Why Did I Fall for That, mentions the Doomsday Clock specifically when they say 4 minutes to midnight on a sunny day. Maybe if we smile, the clock will fade away. Maybe we can force the hands to just reverse. Another song, I've Known No War, also expresses the fears and hopes for peace of those who came of age during the Cold War decades. Meanwhile, the board game Trivial Pursuit becomes a cultural phenomenon. Later editions include the question, what clock was created to adorn the bulletin of atomic scientists? Saturday night, every night at my household, Trivial Pursuit, Wolfman Jack on the radio. My dad cheated every time to win. 1984, 2 minutes and 30 years. British heavy metal band Iron Maiden releases the song 2 Minutes to Midnight. It rises to number 11 on the UK singles charts. Contrary to popular belief, it does not mention either the 1980s Cold War tension or the Cuban Missile Crisis, but was instead inspired by the hydrogen bomb test that took place in the 1950s.
Fire is 3 miles across as it shatters both land and sea. The shockwave races 35 miles and reaches the control ship with force enough to jar the solidly mounted camera.
1986, 3 minutes till midnight, watching the clock. Alan Moore publishes his graphic novel Watchmen. excellent by the way, in which the Doomsday Clock is an ominous recurring presence. It takes place in an alternate version of 1985 in which the United States and the Soviet Union are preparing for an impending nuclear war. Are we sure this is an alternate universe? 1987, bringing fear to fantasy with 3 minutes remaining on the clock. Best-selling science fiction and fantasy writer Pierce Anthony produces his novel, Wielding a Red Sword. In the book, a character known as the Incarnation of War, that's what I'm going to start calling myself, he can use the Doomsday Clock to bring about World War III. I'm not sure I have that power, though. Off-the-charts exuberance in 1991, 7 minutes till midnight. The Bulletins Board of Directors vigorously debates how far back from midnight the Doomsday Clock's hand should be moved now that the Soviet Union has broken apart and the Cold War is over. They choose 17 minutes to midnight. Now this requires the minute hand to be moved to a position outside the proportion of the clock's original design depicted in 1947's magazine cover. The change symbolizes the euphoria that many people feel for surviving 45 years without a nuclear exchange between the United States and the Soviet Union.
Mom and Dad are going to be so phased.
1995, 14 minutes. Holy clock hands, Batman! DC comic writer Chuck Dixon titled Detective Comics number 635, The Doomsday Clock. In this issue, Bruce Wayne tries to regain his hold on Wayne Enterprises and his role as Batman after an injury. At the climax of the story, the big baddie, the Soviet master assassin KG Beast, you see what he did there, KGB, threatens to blow up Gotham City with a baseball-sized nuclear bomb. Let's be honest, at the end of the day, we all just want to be Batman. In 2003, a serious, deadly game. Microsoft publishes the online game Rise of Nations, which features a Doomsday Clock-like Armageddon timer. Each time a player fires a nuclear missile, the timer counts down by 1 tick. When the timer reaches 0, a nuclear holocaust engulfs the Earth and all the players lose. And if you ever played that game, that was a litmus test to show you why it's not a good idea for you to have nuclear capabilities. Bright Eyes and Dark Thoughts in 2005. Bright Eyes releases the song Easy, Lucky, Free. It includes the line, I set my watch to the atomic clock. I hear the crowd count down till the bomb gets dropped. I always figured that there'd be time enough. I never let it get me down. You're lucky I'm not singing these songs, by the way. In 2007, Not Just Nukes moves the clock to 5 minutes. The Bulletins Board determines that the Doomsday Clock should also take existential threats outside of nuclear catastrophe into account because, that's not seemingly likely. But specifically, they start looking at the Earth-threatening dangers posed by climate change and rapid developments in life scientists and other emerging technologies, the ones that we keep creating. But anyhow, against this backdrop, the U.S. band Smashing Pumpkins releases its song Doomsday Clock, which later appears in professional wrestling. WWE. 1980s, baby. Rock and Wrestling Connection. It also appears in Monster Truck Competition and a trailer for the film The Incredible Hulk. Hulk! Smash! In 2009, we're still watching the clock. After nearly 20 years since the end of the Cold War, the Doomsday Clock remains a potent symbol of civilization's vulnerability and also the anxiety of life in a world still full of nuclear weapons. In director Zack Snyder's film adaptation of Alan Moore's Watchmen, the clock remains an ominous recurring presence. Even though the film changes many of the novel's other details and plot points, the Doomsday Clock's reoccurrence remains the same. In 2013, we're remembering Martel. Martel Langsdorff, the creator of the Doomsday Clock, dies on March 26th at the age of 96. Her work appeared in exhibitions at a variety of leading institutions, including the Art Institute of Chicago, the Los Angeles County Museum of Art, and the St. Louis Museum of Art. Her landscapes and still lifes are in the permanent collections of the Smithsonian American Art Museum and the Hirshhorn Museum and Sculpture Garden in Washington, D.C. Her last cover design for the Bulletin was for the May and June 2007 issues. 2016 sees a primetime spot as the clock sets at 3 minutes. The second season of the CBS hit show Madam Secretary includes the Doomsday Clock in a fantastical subplot. To protect the U.S. President's election chances, Secretary of State Elizabeth McCord is tasked with persuading the Bulletin not to move the clock hands forward as planned. The effort fails, but McCord's chief of staff says you can't dissuade people with that much integrity. They're in the pocket of big truth. And I ask you this question, dear watchers, listeners, who else's pocket could they be in? The Doomsday Clock and the Justice League in 2017. Between 2017 and 2019, DC Comics publishes 12 issues of a comic book series titled Doomsday Clock, written by Jeff Johns. The series brings back Watchmen characters like Dr. Manhattan and puts them in the same pages as Superman and Batman. Have I mentioned I just want to be Batman? The second issue in the series depicts scientists announcing the Doomsday Clock hands have moved to 3 minutes to midnight. At the time it's published, the ironic thing is that the real clock was actually set to 2.5 minutes. If that wasn't proof enough that this comic is fully fictional, the white lab coats worn by comic book bulletin representatives should be. And that just crushes everything. They don't wear white coats. 2019, watching The Watchmen on TV. The creator of the hit series Lost brings Alan Moore's Watchmen universe to TV in a new limited HBO series he describes as a remix of the original story, not a reboot. The Old Testament was specific to the 80s of Reagan and Thatcher and Gorbachev, he says. Our fans need to know that this resonates with the frequency of Trump and May and Putin. There's a lot of differences there. Regina King stars in this series, which garners critical acclaim and goes on to win 11 Emmy Awards. This ends our look at the pop culture and the societal references to the Doomsday Clock. We hope you enjoy this episode. If you would, again, please like and subscribe. Get notified when we release new episodes. Episode 3 will be coming soon, where myself and one of the very few people who know the location of the Cold War bunker will be joining me, and we're going to bunker debrief both the political, the governmental, episode 1, and the pop culture and societal, episode 2, which you just watched. We're going to break that down. We're going to give our takeaways. We're going to give our opinions. There will be sarcasm that flows a heavy. But we thank you for watching this. We would love to hear from you. Leave us a comment down below, whether it's good, bad, indifferent, criticism, joke, doesn't matter. We want to hear from you. So until the next time, we'll see you soon, bunkers.